Welcome back to Advocate with Dr. Rufus Lowe, the space where we shine light on what power wants hidden. Today we're talking about ballots. We're talking about democracy, and we're also talking about shadows. Because when election materials go missing, when trust begins to erode, and when confusion replaces clarity, that's not just a mistake, that's a warning sign. And like always, folks, remember to visit my podcast to see the full presentation of this show and others on YouTube. And don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe. Shall we begin? First, we're going to talk about the setting. Okay, so let's be clear. Every allegation of election interference, whether theft, whether it be by mishandling information or misinformation or intimidation, must be investigated through verified evidence and due process. Democracy doesn't survive through rumors, it survives through truth. But here's what history teaches us. Chaos is rarely accidental. When systems are weakened, when institutions are attacked, when voters are discouraged, someone benefits. And we must ask, who profits from confusion? Who profits from distrust? Who profits when Americans stop believing their votes matter? Shadow tolerance. In my work, I talk about shadow tolerance. It's the idea that society often tolerates darkness as long as it protects comfort, as long as it protects power, as long as it protects privilege. We tolerate attacks on journalists. We tolerate attacks on courts. We tolerate attacks on election workers. We tolerate acts on voters. Until one day, the system itself is bleeding. During the era of Donald Trump, we witnessed something dangerous, and that being a sustained campaign to convince Americans that democracy in itself was unreliable. Not with evidence, not with repetition, but with fear, with spectacle, with lies dressed up as patriotism. So now we talk about the strategy of doubt. Let me tell you how power works in the shadows. You don't have to steal every ballot. You just have to convince people their ballot doesn't matter. You don't have to overthrow democracy. You just have to weaken faith in it. You don't have to cancel elections. You just have to make people afraid to participate. That's what I refer to as psychological warfare. That's information warfare. That's political sabotage without fingerprints. When leaders repeatedly claim fraud without proof, they aren't defending democracy. They're preparing the ground to reject it. Clandestine motives. Let's talk about motives. Why attack elections? Why intimidate officials? Why undermine trust? Because real democracy is inconvenient to authoritarians. It's messy. It's unpredictable. It doesn't obey. If your power depends on loyalty instead of legitimacy, then free elections are your enemy. So what do? Here's what you do. You create distrust, division, confusion, fatigue. You make people tired of caring. That's the shadow strategy. Not tanks, not coups, but doubt. And this is a human cost. Behind every ballot is a human being, a grandmother voting for healthcare, a teacher voting for her students or his students, a worker voting for dignity, a veteran voting for peace. When their voices are threatened, that's not politics, that's theft. Not just of paper, of power, of agency, of citizenship. So let's talk about a call to consciousness. Here's the truth. Democracy is not self-sustaining. It requires courage, participation, verification, accountability, and memory. You cannot afford selective outrage. We cannot defend democracy only when our side wins. We must defend it always, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when it exposes lies. Light versus shadow. Light does three things. It reveals, it disinfects, and it empowers. That's why authoritarians fear it. That's why transparency is attacked. That's why journalists are demonized. That's why educators are targeted. Because light ends shadows, and shadows are where corruption survives. Let me leave you with this. Democracy doesn't die in darkness. It dies in silence. It dies when good people stop paying attention. It dies when we accept lies as just politics. It dies when we tolerate shadows. Not here. Not now. And not on my watch. This is Dr. Rufus Lowe, and this is Advocate. Stay informed. Stay engaged. Stay courageous. Because your vote is your voice. Your voice is your power.